Welcome to our mini-episode of the LDA Podcast, a series dedicated to improving the lives and education of all learners. Today, we sit down with Dr. Vincent Alfonso and Monica McHale-Small to talk about learning disabilities and the brain.
Hello everyone, I'm here with Dr. Vincent Alfonso and Dr. Monica McHale-Small. Dr. Vincent Alfonso is an interim dean of the Graduate School of Psychology at Yeshiva University. He's a certified school psychologist and licensed psychologist. He has co-edited The Essentials of Specific Learning Disabilities Identification, the second edition, The Essentials of Cross-Battery Assessment, the third edition, and The Essentials of the WISC-5 assessment. Monica McHale-Small is the president of LDA. She is an adjunct professor at Temple University and a school psychologist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So how would you define a learning disability?
I think definition of learning disability has been somewhat elusive for decades now. We tend to follow the definition of IDEA, or the educational definition. Typically what it is a student, or it could be an adult, school-age person or an adult who is struggling in an academic area, not achieving as expected, given adequate instruction, average or better overall intellectual functioning, cognitive functioning, and other resources, yet is still struggling in a particular area. But I think it's important to understand there's learning difficulty and then there's learning disability, and I think disability is a more intense, more perhaps deeper difficulty than just a simple learning problem or having struggles in school.
Right, and one of the things that's in the definition in IDEA currently is a mention of psychological processing deficits, and we think about those as cognitive processing deficits, and we believe that is a very essential component of learning disability. So there's some neurobiological processing deficit that underlines the learning difficulties that the individuals have.
Absolutely.
So what does the neuroscience say about learning disabilities? Because you made the difference between learning difficulties and learning disabilities. So what is the neuroscience saying about LD or learning disability?
I think, historically, many people believe that there's a neural substrate or a neurobiological substrate. It's kind of been assumed or presumed that there's some kind of neurological basis for a learning disability, but it's only probably been in the last 20 years or so that neuroimaging and fMRIs, MRIs, and other advances in technology to help us understand brain functioning and to link areas of the brain with certain kinds of functioning. And we're starting to see that there are differences between folks who, are like typically developing or are not having problems in a particular academic domain and those who are struggling. And so it's kind of still in its infancy. It takes time for an accumulation of evidence, but this is really helpful because it's always been presumed that there was some kind of neurobiological substrate. Now we're actually seeing that it's most likely true, and that will help us understand better how to help individuals, how to diagnose better, and also then how to intervene, perhaps, once we have clarity on that.
Right. And most of that research that Renee is talking about has really been done on individuals with dyslexia. And we know a lot about the neural networks that are involved in reading and in dyslexia and difficulties with word reading. We're just beginning to sort of understand those neurological correlates to other types of learning disability. Like Laurie Cutting and her colleagues are looking at specific reading comprehension deficits, but that, as much as all of this is in its infancy. Looking at other learning disabilities is very much in its infancy, and that's where we need more research.
Yeah, we definitely need more research on reading comprehension, but also math and writing, which really don't. Writing has the least amount of research going on, and yet we have many students who have difficulties with written expression in some way, shape, or form. So, hopefully, as the research continues, we will have greater clarity on what's happening in the brain that's associated with these different areas, and there could be overlap. There could be some common areas for different kinds of disabilities. We just don't know at this point, but we're much further along than we have been in the past. So.
Right. Even in the last 5 years, our understood the mapping of different types of processing and academic skills to areas of the brain has really advanced amazingly in a short amount of time.
And there's concomitant research that is starting to come out showing that we can actually, we can have an effect on brain development. It's always been thought that the brain has some plasticity and some malleability, but now we're getting to specifics, and so how we can help individuals who are struggling with some kind of academic area through some, cognitive processing training or some kind of rehabilitation, or depending on age and depth and breadth of the situation.
And even instruction, for kids with dyslexia, that if they get very targeted, explicit instruction that emphasizes phonological development and that orthographic mapping, that their brain function becomes more typical, more like a typical reader.
So that neural network mapping that you've just talked about in the interventions, are we seeing that in the field of education, that there's that connection between neuroscience and, I guess, practice in the field by teachers? And
it's beginning, but it's only just beginning. And really, I would say in this last year, there's been more focus on the science of reading. And a lot of that's due to Emily Hanford, who is an investigative reporter with American Public Media, and she has really opened the eyes of a lot of people, and that so people in mainstream education are beginning to talk about it, but we have a long way to go.
I would say I'd probably be a little more pessimistic about what's going on. Just that there's just huge disconnects between or among education, the practice of psychology, neuropsychology, and hardcore research that's taking place in some centers around the country with the neuroimaging. And until we can get all groups together at the table speaking common language, it's going to continue to be difficult, for us to really help people and individuals with some kind of disability. But progress does happen. It's just a little slow, but hopefully LDA can be a leader in bringing together, different groups that are working on the same areas, but so we can be around the table together. That would be really a very good thing.
So it sounds like it's very disjointed right now, and what we're learning in neuroscience necessarily isn't making it to teacher preparation programs, which isn't necessarily making it to our classrooms today.
That's absolutely correct.
So how do we get everyone on that same page? Like, what are the first steps?
Well, I think that, as Vinny just said, that LDA can be a catalyst for this. Now that the neuroscience is giving us a path, we know where we need to be focusing, we know where we need more money for research, and LDA is in the process of making connections with, we had a recent conversation with folks at IES about how we can collaborate and make sure we get some of the top researchers at our conferences and things like that.
Yes. By convening people from different areas who are interested in the same topic and having just good conversation and discussion on how we can work together. I think that so LDA can be the convener of these people from these different groups, and be at the table. And I think that would be a very healthy way to proceed.
This kind of stems off of your last answer. How would you like to see the field of learning disabilities continue to evolve? Bringing everybody to the table, having that common language sounds like a first step, but where do you see us, or where would you hope to see us in 5-10 years?
Well, like I said earlier, I think what we need is more funding for research that will help us understand the other learning disabilities the way we understand dyslexia. Dyslexia is certainly the most common learning disability, but it's not the only one, and we need that funding. Unfortunately, a lot of the federal funding for learning disabilities research has dropped off, and I think that we, as an organization, LDA, can really help to use what we know from neuroscience and start that conversation again. And we have a really strong policy presence in Washington, and I think we have to use that to be a catalyst for getting more funding for these other learning disabilities. So where I would like us to see is, I would like us to have a whole lot more insight into how we diagnose and intervene with reading and writing and math, so that all individuals with learning disabilities can have more successful educational outcomes.
Yeah, I think that we need advocacy. We need to advocate for persons with learning disabilities. We need to effect or have an effect on policy nationally and locally. And then we also need to improve the precision or accuracy in diagnosis, and also in evidence-based interventions, that so that we can apply the appropriate intervention for the individual, have a good match, tailor the intervention towards the person who's having the difficulties.
We're going to leave the listeners with one last call to action. What would your call to action be for them? How could they help progress the field or knowledge of learning disabilities?
That's a good question.
Well, what I think a call to action is that all of our affiliates and the members in those different affiliates, we need to make sure that folks know that we're out here. And so just having that voice, so if there's an issue that comes up around policy or about, for example, there's a sign-on letter around IES funding for research, right? We need our affiliates to be very active in letting their state legislators know that we're LDA supporting this, and that they're supporting this, and as the constituents of that particular legislator, and that we're a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, that we're here and we need support too, and we'll work with people, and that every individual who speaks up, that voice goes a long way, and
Yes.
we really need as many people as possible to be lobbying, to be writing, to be learning, to be
Telling their stories.
Telling their stories, yeah, absolutely. That's how it gets done.
Thank you, Monica and Vinny, and thank you for your last call to action. I think that's something we can all make progress on and actually fulfill and do. So I know you're very busy people. I thank you for taking the time to sit and chat with me, and hopefully we get to chat again in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to our mini episode of the LDA podcast, which was made possible by the Learning Disabilities Foundation of America. Our theme music is Little Idea by Scott Holmes. In our next episode, we'll sit down with Toby Baker, the winner of the 2020 Harrison Sylvester Award, to discuss how to self-advocate. For more resources from LDA, visit ldaamerica.org.